Why does anyone become an actor? Well, you have something you want to express and the creativity and all of that, but some part of you wants to be seen, wants to be known, wants to be understood because you weren't seen or known and understood as a child.
David Sutcliffe. He is a former actor who starred on the hit show Gilmore Girls.
Thought I'd stop by and surprise the Gilmore Girls.
Who gave up the Hollywood life to become a somatic therapist.
I was giving up a lot of status. I was giving up the easy money. I was giving up my sense of self. My identity was very tied up into being an actor. And then you become an actor and you get famous and you realize nothing's changed. Nobody actually sees me. And in my case, I didn't feel fully expressed. I was in my mask, in my idealized self. I was a nice guy. I was the good boy. I was hiding this other aspect of me. And so ultimately, I was unfulfilled.
On that line, you left Hollywood to enter this line of healing. So I'm assuming you had all the traps of what the ego perceives to be happiness, right? Fame, I'm assuming you had female desire, and any ego wants. At what point were you like, this isn't what makes me happy? And then what have you come to that actually gives us some level of happiness is a strange word, but fulfillment?
Well, I remember very early in my career just about a year or two after I'd kind of made it, I was sitting on the set of Friends right at the height of their success. They were shooting the 150th episode and I was guest starring on it. And at the time they're making $750,000 per episode. And, it was quite a thing to be sitting there with all the friends. And the track that I was on, as an actor, kind of a romantic comedy actor. That's where I was getting most of my roles. I thought, well, it's something like this is the end game for me. This is what it would look like. And I had this really distinct but sort of scary sense that I didn't want it. And I didn't know what to make of that. I thought, is this my fear of success, or is there some part of me that doesn't actually want this? And that was the first hit of this doubt or sense of unfulfillment or a feeling that I was chasing the wrong dream for the wrong reasons. But it really came into fruition about 4 or 5 years later when I had some real success. I had a TV show. I had like 3 movies and just, movie star girlfriend. I mean, I had it all. I had a nice house, the whole thing. And I was, I wouldn't say I was depressed, but I wasn't happy. I wasn't feeling fulfilled. I felt a little lost and disoriented. And then my girlfriend dumped me. I'd never been dumped before. That was devastating, but it surprised me how devastating it was. And so I knew there was something else going on. It wasn't just about her. There was something else happening. And it took me out of control. I didn't know exactly where I was, what was happening inside myself, which is a scary feeling. And a friend recommended that I go to this workshop called Radical Aliveness up at the Esalen Institute in Big Sur, California. And this guy had given me a lot of good advice up to this point. He was the one who got me into therapy. So I've been doing therapy for a number of years. But I went up to this workshop and just got my mind blown. And there was something about not just the work that I did and what I learned about myself. It was the way that she worked, her methodology. It just spoke to me. It just lit me up. And it was like everything that I was looking for from acting, I got in this workshop. Like there was a kind of search for truth to go into the depths, and acting at its best, that's what it is. You have to be alive in the moment, present. You're fighting for something, and it's exciting when it's great. But unfortunately, television, it's really like a factory. It's just you're churning out product over and over again. So it lost its excitement very quickly, the actual work of it. I was like, I just have a job. It's a well-paying job. It's a high-status job. People look at me and admire me. But at the end of the day, I felt like I'm just working on a assembly line. So that was sort of the beginning of the end of my acting career. Not consciously, but that's really where it all started.
In your mind, what were you exactly giving up? And what did you feel like you were giving up?
When I gave up acting? Well, when I ultimately gave it up a number of years later, after I completed this radical Aliveness training program, I was giving up a lot of status, right? Actors get a lot of attention. You're very respected. I was giving up the easy money. I was giving up relationships. I was giving up my sense of self. My identity was very tied up into being an actor. And now I was going off and doing this therapy, which is a little bit on the outside looking in, strange, weird. And I think people were concerned for me. Why would you give up?
It's a good sign, though.
I didn't realize that at the time. You're just in something. You're like, have I gone crazy? I mean, at the depth of it, I knew. I was just, listen, I got into acting because I was just following my passion, following my impulse. I mean, that's a crazy decision to make. You're going to become an actor. Everybody's like, what are you, fucking crazy? You're not going to make it as an actor.
What gave you the strength to take that hero journey, to be like, I'm fully diving into this unknown. Let's do it. What do you think gave you that strength to jump?
I don't know. It's a good question. People ask me that all the time. How could you leave that behind? What gave you the strength? Just from the very beginning of my life, I've just been following. I just do what I want. I do what I like. And I let that be the beacon and let it guide me. And it's constantly changing and emerging. Even my career right now, I'm always changing my offerings. It's like I don't have one standard offer, and that's what it is for 3, 4, 5, 6 years. I'm constantly changing and evolving. I'm doing things that light me up, that make me happy. And so that was really it. I was just following what I was passionate about, where my aliveness was, what excited me, where I felt there was the potential for the most growth and depth.
Did you get to a place where you didn't need the validation as much as you used to?
Yeah.
Because for me, if I were in that position, right, it would be like what I would fear is, like you said, I suddenly lose high level of validation externally. And most people in that position who previously, I'm not saying you, most actors go into it because they don't have any internal validation, right? They go and seek externally over and over again.
So that was me. That was absolutely me.
What I'm so curious about is that how the fuck did you kind of take that leap of like, I'm going to try and actually go internal now and remove all the hyper external validation coming my way to try and cultivate the internal?
Well, once I realized what was actually motivating me, that I was being motivated by exactly that, external validation, the validation that I wanted and didn't get as a child, and understanding that was a dead end street, that I was never going to get it there. There's no point anymore, right? Now, it is hard to give up. The ego resists. The ego doesn't want to give that up. The ego is in love with it. So there was that struggle, certainly, and I kept going back. I mean, I quit, I think 2 or 3 times, called my agents up. I'm like, I'm done. Don't call me. No more auditions. And they would call me back, a month later. Well, this one audition came in, and it was like, all right, well, maybe, go check it out. But ultimately, I started to see Hollywood and that whole game for what it was. I mean, it's very seductive. We all grow up watching Hollywood movies and seeing movie stars, and it looks glamorous, and who doesn't want that? Yeah. So, but once you're inside it, once I'd had the experience, once I, kissed the movie star and had the money and the success, I knew what it was. And so there was no mystery there for me anymore. The issue was, and continues to be for all of us, when you leave something behind, something that's been useful to you, something that you've had success in, something that's given your ego a lot of gratification, you are stepping into the unknown. And that's what's scary. And that's, I think, why most people stay where they are, because you have to enter into the unknown. You don't know what's going to happen next. And you have to trust yourself enough, or trust life, or trust God, that somehow, some way, it's going to work out. And I just had a faith in that. I also knew very early on that I had not just passion for this work, but that I had skill. I knew right away. I understood it. And, my teacher came up to me very early on and said to me, like, you get it. Like, you get what's going on here. And I did very quickly. And so I knew that I had a talent.
Yep.
And that helps, obviously. When you feel talented in something, when you feel like you're being useful, when you feel like you're making a contribution, when you feel like you're coming from your higher self, it makes it a lot easier to move in that direction.
How did you go about cultivating your internal validation and branching off that? How can someone who, most of us nowadays, especially social media, need external validation to feel safe? My core battle internally has been depending on external validation throughout my life. That's been many of us is our core battle. How did you go about healing that, and how does one in that position go about healing that?
I don't know that I've healed it.
Okay, but you're on the path. So somewhere further on the path than me, probably.
It's a constant battle. It's every day. I want
appreciate the
validation.
honesty. Yeah.
I post my Instagram stuff, and I'm like, this is why, where are all the likes?
Same here.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we're all in that, and so I think what you have to do, you're not going to escape it. We live in the matrix. There's no escaping the matrix. And there's no escaping the matrix of our mind, and there's no escaping our past. Like, that's a part of us, right? We have to reconcile it to it. I'm not a real believer in, like, you're going to transcend your old self and then get to this plane where it's all love and light. I don't think that's a thing.
Neither do I. Agree.
Yeah, I think
it frustrates me when people argue that on the show. So
oh, really?
I respect it. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I mean, we're human beings. We have a shadow. We have evolutionary impulses.
Yeah, because for me, it's like that's a part of me that will flare up, or you.
Yeah.
Whenever I try and separate myself from it or fight it, it ends up punching me in the face 10 times harder, right? So when I surrender to it, like, okay, it's happening. It just.
Well, what is that voice?
Yeah.
What is that? It's fear, right? And when did that happen? It happened in your childhood. So you can't push away the voice of fear, the voice of the scared child, the voice of the child who had unmet needs. You have to look at it and honor it and give it space, give it room. You just don't let it drive the bus, So you have to make peace with the shadow aspects.
How do you not let it drive the bus?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, the first thing you have to do is become very aware of what it is, that it's there, and then be aware of the mechanism of it, because it's very, very tricky. And once you see it in one place, it'll pop up in another place. And once you see it there, it's going to pop up over here. So it's constantly like, it's like the way religion talks about the devil. The devil is always waiting around the corner to seduce you. And it can come in all kind of unexpected ways. And that's really the same thing with what we call the lower self. I mean, there's this fear we all have. If I'm all the way who I am, if I'm totally expanded, if I'm in my gift, if I'm shining the love of my divine self, I'm going to be annihilated. I'm going to be judged. And because we were as children, all of us got hurt in places, in those places as children. And so it's the most vulnerable thing is to stand tall in your power and greatness. And so we all have a part of us that resists that, and we just have to keep an eye on it. And so the answer to your question, like, how do you kind of avoid letting that part of you drive the bus? I think you have to have a daily practice. That's what I've learned. If I'm not vigilant about reminding myself what's true, like who I actually am, then that other part of me, the ego part of me, will come online. So, and I think it looks different for everyone, but every religion has some kind of practice, whether it's prayer beads or the rosary, or Muslims, 5 times a day, the Muslims pray. Why is it 5 times a day? Why do you need to pray 5 times a day? Because it's so easy to forget and get lost in the Maya. So you have to get down on your knees 5 times a day to remember the truth, to remember God, to make your prayers. And so I think that in the world we live in, if you don't have that kind of practice, it's so easy to get pulled into the Maya, into the distraction. And that takes discipline. You have to have discipline. If you want to be close to God, if you want to fulfill your mission, here on earth, if you want to be in your highest self and be fully expressed, it takes an incredible amount of discipline.
You mentioned the word truth many times. What is it? Why is it truth important to you?
Well, because lies are so destructive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, lies are the seed of evil. Lies are distortions. Lies are how we fool ourselves. And more often than not, we don't even know we're lying when we're lying. And the person that we lie to the most is ourself. So I feel like you have to have a vigilance about pursuing the truth at all costs, at all costs.
Yeah, my highest spiritual duty to me is to the truth. That's what I tell myself.
Exactly.
It's always what's true.
And sometimes moving towards the truth requires you confront your fear, requires that you feel your pain, requires that you look at the parts of yourself that you don't like, requires you face, your judgments and your cruelty and the ways that you can be self-destructive or destructive to others. Those are not easy places to look at, but that is part of the truth.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to be in the truth. So I think, people who are really trying to pursue the truth, I think it's the most noble thing a person can do. And it comes at a heavy cost.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you want to go into the cave and slay the dragon, you might get cut. You might get burned. Like, it's not easy. And I think, in fact, it requires a lot of suffering. Not unnecessary suffering, but, for me, suffering is how we burn away our pain. And so there's no way to get to the truth without suffering. And it's all there in the story of Christ. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of suffering that he has to go through to get to the truth.
One of the dangers within this topic is the power of human denial, in denying the way you feel, in denying your negativity, in denying your shadow, right? I think one of the most dangerous modern thought experiments we're dealing with is hyperpositivity, is ignoring all kinds of darkness. So what's the consequence, especially in the unconscious mind, for people who constantly deny their own negative feelings or shadow? They constantly just repress them. What's the consequence of that on the unconscious mind?
Well, they're going to act out on it. It's 100%. Like, if you're in denial about your shadow is eventually going to emerge and act out, and you're going to rationalize it. You're going to be in denial of it. So for me, that's really the foundation of my work, right? And I don't start on the first day, because it's not an easy thing to confront. But all of us have a shadow. It's a defense. We call it, as I said, we call it the lower self in the modality that I work in. And its job is to keep you protected. And it is a defense against pain. It's a defense against the full expression of our love. And it's a result of the places that we were really, really, really hurt. And so all of us made some kind of decision in the moment when we got hurt as children, which said something like, I never want to feel that again, which is rational thing. So I'm never going to behave in a way that might elicit the response that will make me feel that again. So what does that look like? Well, if I was betrayed, I'll never trust again. Right? If my needs were denied, well, I'll never need again. If I felt like I wasn't seen by my parents or understood, it's like, well, I'm never going to show the world who I am. Right? It's defense against the places that we got really hurt. So confronting the shadow requires that we confront our deepest pain. And most of us don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Who wants to do that? Who wants to feel their pain? So you have to put yourself in positions where there's no way out. Go to workshop, ayahuasca ceremony, whatever it is for you, but something where you're committed and you have no choice but to feel it. And I think you also need groups of people to help you feel it. So, and if you don't do that, then you're being run by your shadow. You think that you're making conscious decisions, but you're not. There's this other part of you that's really controlling things, and that part of you is seeking separation, because separation is safety. And that part of you has a negative intention, right? It also has an intention to punish, to seek revenge. And again, these are not aspects of ourself that we like to confront. But if we don't confront them, we are going to create mayhem in our life and in the lives of those around us.
Let's lay out the steps. Let's say someone figures out a component of their shadow. What does the process of integrating it look like? How does one be at peace with a problematic side of themselves?
Well, I think there's a lot of ways to do it. I mean, the way that I do it and in the work that I do is I give it a voice. I have them express directly and energetically in an embodied way that aspect of themselves, which gives them like just they feel like, holy shit, there's a part of me that wants to destroy. It's not an idea anymore. Oh, I can feel this part of me that wants to be cruel. It's like I can actually feel the energy in me of evil that wants to destroy, that wants to kill, that wants to get revenge, that loves to make another suffer, that loves to fuck with them in some way. Like to really feel that, and also to feel it in relationship, because that's where we got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And so generally we project things out onto other people. And the most common place that happens is in our relationships, or closest relationships. I mean, my cruelty, where does my cruelty come out? It comes out in my relationship with my woman.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not intending to be cruel, but I have said things to her or acted in certain ways, and she has done the same to me, that are just incredibly cruel. Like withdrawing, that's a perfect example, right? If I'm hurt, let's say you and I are in a relationship and you say something to me that hurts me, and what am I going to do? I'm going to withdraw. And in that withdrawal, I'm like protecting myself, but there's another part of me that's like, I'm punishing you, right? I'm pulling away some aspect of myself, and you don't know what's going on, right? I haven't said directly to you, hey man, you said this thing that hurt my feelings. I didn't like that. I'm just quietly pulling away, withdrawing. And what's really the intention there? I'm trying to fuck with you. I want you to suffer. I want you to feel what you made me feel. All of that generally is going on in the unconscious. So you want to make those aspects of yourself conscious. You want to know that you're capable of that. And one of the things that I say to people, it's like all of the horrors that you see going on in the world and that have gone on forever, the atrocities, you know, the murders, like that's part of the collective consciousness of humanity. And it doesn't live just over there with the bad guys. That energy is inside you. There's a Nazi that lives inside you. And had you been in Nazi Germany in 1939, 1940, very likely you would have been a Nazi, or you wouldn't have done anything about it. That's most of us. And that's a humbling thing to face about ourselves. But in fact, facing that about ourselves takes great humility.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is actually the path to salvation.
Yeah.
You know, you have to know the devil in you, and you have to shake hands with the devil.
It's also that, for me, it's a good and bad consequence of doing deep shadow work, is that because I've seen all those things in myself, I recognize them fast in others, right? Like I can see evil immediately. I can see darkness immediately. I can see victimhood immediately because I've seen it myself. That makes me more isolated, because most people, before, when I was unaware, I would just see good in people, right? And it's not a terrible thing, but I just be, oh, that person's probably a nice guy. And now I see someone, I'm like, I see your shit like this, because I see it in myself so deeply. So it makes things a little more isolated, but it also protects me in a way from getting fucked with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So back to relationships, how can you, I think some of us have to learn the hard lesson by letting the shadow speak, right? You withdraw, and you're like, oh, I shouldn't have withdrawn.
Yeah.
But how can we get to a point where we don't actually let the shadow manifest outside? Like where we don't have to experience the manifestation of like the part of us externally, so we can learn to not do it. And my answer for me is like, unfortunately, is that I just had to fuck up over and over again. I don't know. It's a pretty morbid answer, but it's like, can you actually not fuck up and learn?
That's right. Well, you have to have compassion for yourself, right? You can't make yourself bad and wrong. You have to be self-responsible. And it's good to feel remorse and regret, but you don't want to shame yourself, because that's a trap, right? If remorse and regret says like, I've done bad. And if I've done bad, I can make amends, I can fix it. But if I am bad, there's no way out of that.
Mhm.
Like at my core, I am bad. And there's, you're just going to spiral and keep repeating it over and over again. So I think what you have to do is just make mistakes, forgive yourself, bring consciousness to it. In the person you're in a relationship with, you have to acknowledge it to them, because that's a sense of relief. Like when I acknowledge my bad behavior and take responsibility for it in my relationship, it's a relief for her to hear it.
Yeah.
Because that creates safety, because what it demonstrates is that I have awareness and consciousness over it. And if I have awareness and consciousness over it, she feels seen, but she can also trust me more moving forward. If I hide it, if I pretend that it's not there, or I deny it or repress it, how can she feel safe? She doesn't know when it's going to come again, right? We're out of connection there. So the most important thing is the awareness piece, but also to understand what's going on. So if I'm going to fight with my lady and I feel this part of me that wants to say something mean,
Mm-hmm.
I catch it, I breathe, I'm like, okay, I want to annihilate her with this comment. This comment has the intention to hurt her. Well, that information lets me know that I must be hurt. And that's what it is that I'm protecting. So can I connect to the place where I'm hurt? What happened that hurt me? And am I willing, do I have the courage to allow myself to be that vulnerable? To say, hey, you said this thing, or this happened, and it was hurtful. Like I felt really hurt by that, instead of annihilating her. Now that's not an easy thing to do in the midst of a conflict where we're triggered and all of our childhood stuff is coming up, and she's in her defense and I'm in my defense. But once you make those connections in your mind, it happens quicker. And so that's really the skill that I've been able to develop, not perfectly, as my fiance will tell you, but I'm a hell of a lot better than I used to be. And I think I am pretty good at taking responsibility for it, because the truth is, and this is where it started, I don't have shame about my shadow. I don't have shame about that part of me, because I know what it is. I know it exists in the world. I know it's been here forever. And I'm opposite. I'm proud of the fact that I'm able to look at the parts of myself that are cruel and judgmental and that want to destroy and that want to win, and all of these kind of negative aspects.
You end up being a better man in the process.
Of course.
Because you don't leak it.
Well, and a safer man.
Yeah, that's why. I mean, you definitely talked about this, but the danger of a nice man, a nice guy, is that he has no idea what his shadow is.
That's right.
And he's more dangerous, right? Because he's a leak it eventually.
Yeah.
So Jordan Peterson's a quote, like, you need a man who knows his capacity for danger but doesn't act on it, right? What's important? So why is that important for men to know, to like be so familiar, especially men, be so familiar with their capacity for aggression, for danger, but not act on it, rather than the man who like doesn't ever grapple with that. The modern, liberal soy boy doesn't ever grapple with that, part of him. What's the danger of that?
Well, the danger is exactly what you're seeing in the culture right now. The modern liberal soy boy. There's an intense amount of control and cruelty that's coming out of that side, and judgment, and it's really just fear. Right. And if they could understand that they have a part of themselves that's motivated by fear, that is actually seeking domination and control, then they might come to terms with something. But I think they're doing real harm in the world because they're so identified with being good.
Yeah.
I'm good. I have these beliefs. Therefore, I am a good person. And
it's more so also I am perceived as good if I believe this.
I'm perceived as good. Yeah. And obviously that becomes groupthink. You have and this happens everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an imperative to stay in that frame, because we're all tribal and we want to signal to our tribe that we all are the same. And so that's where they experience safety. So I have a lot of compassion for the psychology of it. But I just know from my experience, and I used to be really one of those guys. I was in Hollywood. I was a nice guy. My whole acting career was playing nice guys on TV. And that's one of the reasons that I left, because it became intolerable for me. And then when I started,
So do you fear you become the archetype in a way by playing it so often?
well, just that I wasn't being all of who I was. Why does anyone become an actor? Well, you have something you want to express and the creativity and all of that. But some part of you wants to be seen, wants to be known, wants to be understood, because you weren't seen or known, understood as a child, generally. And then you become an actor and you get famous and you realize nothing's changed. Nobody actually sees me. And in my case, I didn't feel fully expressed. I was in my mask, in my idealized self. I was a nice guy. I was the good boy. And I was, handsome and charming and funny. And so I ended up having success and making a lot of money, but I was hiding this other aspect of me. And so ultimately I was unfulfilled and frustrated and confused and lost. And it really wasn't until I went to that first workshop that we talked about where I discovered the depth of my shadow. I mean, I experienced it in a way that shocked me. I couldn't believe the level of intensity of the murderous rage that was inside me. And also what was underneath that, this pain that was there. And once I felt that in an embodied way, my whole sense of reality changed, because obviously if you're walking around and you have all this murderous rage inside you that you don't know about, that's a problem. Mm-hmm. And then in exactly what you said, once you see it in yourself, you start to see it in other people. And so you see that we're all kind of lost in that, the Maya of that. It's its own matrix. And, so that's when I look out in the world and I see the destructive behavior, that's what I see. It's just like, it's the lower self. It's fear. It's a protection. And then a rationalization on top of that, and the creation of this idealized self-image that says that I'm good and they are bad. And from that mindset, I can rationalize doing almost anything.
This podcast sponsor is EONS. EONS uses a blend of adaptogenic mushrooms, nootropics, and biotechnology to help solve the issues of sleep, anxiety, gut health, and productivity. EONS is nature's technology. These here are the sleep gummies. Anyone I give these sleep gummies to falls asleep immediately and all their insomnia, sleep issues go away. Check out eons.com to get their supplements. What did it feel like to have part of the Hollywood system turn against you? Because I researched your name. There's a number of articles being like, right wing, problematic, interviewing Tate. What was that like for you to have that? Was it as simple as being like, whatever, or part of you hurt? What was that like?
No, it's hurt.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very hurtful because they don't see me, right?
Yeah.
They don't understand.
Why is it hurtful?
Exactly, because I don't feel seen. I don't feel understood. And I'm being judged and I'm being derided. I'm being made bad. I'm being made wrong. And by people that I actually like and care about. Like, I don't hate those people. I like those people. Some of them, I think their politics are a little distorted and I don't agree with them, but they're not bad people. But so when they're demonizing me in a way that I think is not fair, mm-hmm. or lacks perspective, it's painful. And when I get angry or annoyed by it, I know that's, what's going on. I just feel hurt. And so I'm out of connection, and I don't like to be out of connection, right? Out of connection it doesn't feel good. So yeah, that's been hard for me. It's been very hard for me because, I don't really have much of a relationship with anyone in Hollywood. I don't really know what they think of me. But it's also true of the training that I did, the psychotherapeutic training I did in core energetics, because they're also very left and liberal and woke. And so pretty much my entire community of the first part of my life, for the last 20, 30 years, I don't see eye to eye with them. And so I'm an outlier. And I think secretly, this is maybe my fantasy. I think secretly they admire me. How can they not?
Of course.
I went my own way. I'm standing my own
down,
ground. I'm saying what I think. I'm like, how can you not admire that?
Deep down, we all want to speak our truth.
Exactly.
And we're scared of people who end up doing it because we can't be them. And we end up hating them.
That's exactly right.
But I understand your frustration because it's inhumane. Truly, it's like to what's happening nowadays is if you reduce cancel culture to one logical statement, it's that you believe X, and therefore everything about it you represent, right?
That's right.
Your whole character, your story, your personality goes out the window just because you believe one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they tie one thing to you, interviewing Tate or something, and then they believe that everything that comes with that, all the shadow of that is you.
Yeah.
And just purely, irrational, and then they can't, then you're out, the good in you is just thrown out the window.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of Tate, he got big off of emphasizing the importance of the difference of genders, which is now somehow a controversial belief. What do you think about that? What do you think about people believing that there's no difference between genders?
Well, it's obviously insane. It's just, it's amazing. The genius of it, though, is we're having this conversation. The fact that we're having this conversation is an indication that they're winning.
Any post I create that literally says men and women are different,
Mm-hmm.
I get the most engagement, which is funny enough, but
yeah.
I get the most hundreds of people being like, you bigot, men and women aren't different. But what's the consequence of believing that, of having us discuss this, especially what's the consequence of us denying our own truth in that way?
You're denying God. You're denying nature. It's an affront. It's a sin. That's how I see it. It's ridiculous, and it's rooted in exactly what we've been talking about. It's rooted in resentment, and it's rooted in the way that I see it. When I look at the transgender activists, let's say I know there's people that are legitimately transgender. That's the thing. However, I just had Blair White on my podcast, and she said straight up that she believes that she transitioned at least in part because of her trauma. Obviously.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But you can't talk about that.
No.
You're not allowed to talk about that.
No.
And that's scary to me. And the fact that you're not allowed to talk about that demonstrates to me that they are hiding something, that they are in a lie. And so they defend that lie by calling anyone who pushes back against it a transphobe or a bigot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very persuasive. Nobody wants to be called a racist. Nobody wants to be called a homophobe or a transphobe. And it's a very dark, subversive tactic with the intention of controlling other people,
for sure,
but also the intention of regaining some sense of power
mm-hmm.
in a place that they feel otherwise powerless.
It's just so freeing to be at a place where you can call me that. It's okay.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I know who I am.
Yeah.
I know I'm not a racist. I know I'm not a transphobe. I know what's in my heart. It's the issue is, somebody calls you that. I mean, there's lots of people out there. People think all kinds of things of me, and I don't have any control over it. And, it took me a while to to get used to that,
I think also the consequence of it for me is the understanding of masculine and feminine energy and polarity has truly changed my life. The understanding it psychologically, the anima, Jungian psychology, it's truly helped me a lot. For me, it's more so, it's also problematic that that's being denied. That someone understanding their own energy internally is they can't even understand that nowadays. When you tell a person who identifies that way of thinking, I'm a masculine energy, they're get triggered all of a sudden, and they're denying their truth truly. They're denying. Do you think it's possible to have a good relationship without a complete throwing out of the concept of masculine and feminine energy?
No.
Why?
Because it's innate in us. It's literally how life is created.
Mm-hmm.
It's all right there in the masculine feminine dynamic, right? So if you deny it, you're denying life, and then you're going to create chaos. And so I think these concepts are really important. Listen, everything can get distorted. There's a distorted masculine, there's a distorted feminine, and both have done destruction and damage. I don't think the solution is to pretend those things don't exist and to make us all the same. It's to teach men and women about their true nature and to embrace it and to teach them that actually that's where the freedom lies. Listen, I understand feminism. You talk to a lot of women, let's say of my mother's generation, they didn't feel like they had any options. They had to get married, they had to have kids, they had to stay home, so their freedoms were really limited, and they wanted something different. Fair enough, they should, right? But the rationalization about gender differences becoming exclusively about sexism is I think where we run into problems. All the differences in the amount of money that men and women make, and the amount of CEOs who are women, that we assume that all of that is because of sexism. Well, no, it's because men and women are different. They have different interests. They're better at different things, across the spectrum. And I think it's just important that we accept that. And I think it's not accepting that, fighting against it, it becomes an ideology. And whenever you want to impose an ideology on nature, you're just going to create madness.
Why do you think the collective consciousness craved someone like Tate so much, who talked about this exact thing, that men and women are different? Why did we crave that so much at this point in time?
Well, because he's a reaction to the other side's extremism, right? So Tate comes along, or Trump, and people say, well, they're extreme. They're holding this pole. It's like, well, he's a reaction to the pole being so far the other way. So you need that voice. And I think that's just how culture works. I do think that we live in a kind of collective consciousness. And so whenever any character emerges that seems to garner a lot of attention and we start paying attention to, I'm curious about it, right? It has meaning, and whether it's on the right or the left, even the transgender issue, it's like if you step back and you don't judge it the way that, or think about it the way that we've been thinking about it, like there's something going on there. I mean, I also know that is a sign, a symptom of an empire in decline, androgyny throughout history, according to Camille Paglia. When societies fall, there tends to be a move towards androgyny. So it may just be that. But also when you look at technology and, how we're making babies in, these incubators, I wonder if at some point we will transcend like this primal human nature and become more integrated with machines, and this binary may actually end.
This is a wild statement, but I don't care. It's that why I'm kind of questionable and a little opposed to the transgender movement. Not against your ability to choose to be that. Of course. It's because it's the first step towards transhumanism. It just is.
Yeah, I hear you. And I guess, which may be inevitable.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, maybe it just part,
I don't want it.
Yeah,
but it may be inevitable. I don't know where evolution is taking us. It does seem that we're already integrated with machines. You have your phone.
We're cyborgs. I can't go without my phone.
So it just feels like that's going to keep progressing, and who knows what that looks like. We don't know what that's going to look like in 5 years. Never mind 50 years. Never mind 500 years.
Does that scare you?
It does scare me, but.
How do you grapple with your own fear? How does one, let's actually dive into this topic now. How does one conquer a fear? And what's the importance of conquering a fear?
Well, maybe I'll share a little bit about my work with the Lakota people, the Native Americans, because I think that they have a really interesting way of dealing with this, which is, you put yourself in a sweat lodge. You can't get out. I mean, you can get out, but you can't really get out.
And the peak of that, you feel like you're dying, in my experience.
Yeah, it can be. It can get really hot in there, and it's very few people that at some point don't really confront their fear. They panic, right? It's dark, drum, there's music, it gets hot, it's confined, you don't know when it's going to end. I mean, it's just all of the elements.
All the unknown as well.
Exactly, to create this feeling of terror. And I think it's ingenious because it forces you to feel it. It forces you to deal with it. It forces you to see that it was an illusion. it wasn't real, that you can survive this, that it's just a feeling. And I've seen people, and myself included, freak out in sweat lodge, but get through it. And when they come out, they're so elated, they're so happy that they were able to confront and move through their fear. You're not going to do that on your own. It's just not a thing you're going to do. You have to put yourself in a situation where you're contained and there's no way out of it. And this is the same thing with ayahuasca. I know everybody's got different experiences with psychedelics, but a lot of people have a hard time and fear comes up and there's no way out, right?
Yeah.
Like once you've drank this brew, you're now going for the ride, and you either surrender to the experience or you suffer. And that's really the lesson. And so all of the not all, but many of the Lakota traditions really are about that, like putting you to the edge of your fear and moving through it. And I think that makes you so strong. I mean, there's nothing that I've ever done that's had the value in my life, that's created more value in my life than all the work that I've done with the Lakota people, the Vision Quest, Sweat Lodge, Sundance. I mean, because it's not therapy. They're not talking about your feelings. They're just going to put you through an ordeal that's going to make you confront your deepest fear. You're going to suffer, and you've got to get through it. And I think it's brilliant. So it has to be something like that. Like, not everybody has to do that, but there are many things to do. But you have to put yourself in a situation where there's no way out. You have to deal with it.
At the core of fear is the need to surrender your control. And that's the thing I probably struggle with the most in my life is losing control. That's like my biggest struggle. And
Yeah.
I've been that dude who's taken intense psychedelics multiple times and thought I would literally recorded, I'm dying.
Yeah.
I just couldn't let go. I just can't.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I struggle with the most because of my trauma. I just can't let go. Do you share that? Or are you at a place now where you can it's easier for you to be like, you know what? If things aren't going your way, you can just be like, I surrender to you.
Yeah, I've gotten better at it over time.
Were you ever not good at it?
Yes.
Okay, so how did you get there? How can one get there?
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. That was the mantra and prayer that got me through it. Yes is acceptance, and thank you is obviously gratitude. So you just have to accept and be grateful for whatever experience you're having, which is a kind of letting go.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, when you get taken to your edge, you feel like you're either going to go insane or you have to let go. And yeah, letting go into the unknown is terrifying. Because what are we letting go of? We're letting go of our identity. We're letting go of our defense. And so there's a belief that we're going to be annihilated if we let go. We're going to enter into the black hole of nothingness, into the void. And, who wants to do that? But what's on the other side of that is a deep connection with self, a deep connection with all that is, deep connection with God. But you can't know that, And so it's really is a leap of faith. And it's not easy, but we all know that letting go, surrendering is good, and that holding on is bad. And to have compassion for ourselves in the place where we hold on, because we had to hold on as children. It's how we survived. All of us adapted ourselves in different ways, as we talked about earlier, to get through our childhood, to survive. So we have to have tremendous compassion for ourselves in the place where we struggle to let go.
Absolutely zero control. And then now when, I came into a stronger body and somewhat good looks and money, it's like I had all the tools to be like, I now have control.
Yeah.
I can control everything now.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw some of that in Tate in his need for control. Did that ever come up a lot with him?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's got total control over his world, or he's in the illusion of that. And, I don't want to say too much about Tate because, I don't really want to psychoanalyze him, but,
okay.
What I'd say is, when I asked him about being in prison and that he had no control. Like it was a loss of control. Like, yeah, he knows, and he knows in some way that was good medicine for him. Like it forced him to confront himself. And I was really impressed by his ability to acknowledge his fear. It was scary in there. Like, there was like the little boy. It's like, yeah, I was scared. I was really scared. So that demonstrated to me that he's got a lot more self-awareness and humility than he presents. But I think, listen, we want to control our environment out of fear. It's just that simple, right? And that's a normal human reaction, right? It's just, and at the end of the day, it's born out of weakness, and we're never going to get what we want there. And it's this idea of control is perpetuated everywhere in the culture, right? Do these things and you're going to be rich. Do all these things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you're going to be successful. The message of like surrender to God and then you're going to be successful. Let go of control and then you're going to be successful. Well, I don't know what that looks like. That's right. You don't know what that looks like. But that's the only choice you have.
Even though it's hard to have evidence for, letting go, working in the moment, works for me is like, I'm asking you this because it might have gone even deeper for you with age, is that if I look back at my life, right, there's a Bible quote, even though I'm not a Christian, you may not know now, but you know eventually. Like I can look back at my life and be like, oh, everything had to fucking play out that way. Like I couldn't have been successful at that point in time when I wanted to, because I didn't know shit.
Yeah.
Like, I was in no position to be that way.
Yeah.
I couldn't get those girls at 18 because I would have probably like made them lose their minds. So I was so insecure, right? So it's like all these things happen in the exact time that should have happened. So I can use that reference point to look to now if something's not coming the way I want it to be, I can look back and be like, I trust I'll eventually know why.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has that become more true for you as you've aged?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I still get lost in it. I still, I have these transitionary moments in my life where I'm like, what am I doing? What's going on? I can't figure this out. And I get lost in the doubt. And so it's not always easy for me to trust, but I've lived enough life and I've seen these little miracles happen, these synchronicities, and I can look back and I see exactly what you're talking about, how that led to that, and I had to go through that to get there, and it was all part of it, and it was all necessary. So in the moment, I do have a lot more trust and faith, and what I realize is that's the highest quality. That's the place where you have the most power is when you have faith. I mean, if you're a fighter, you're an athlete, and you have to compete against somebody who has unwavering faith, who wants to, who's just there, present, without zero doubt in their mind.
If you look at the rise of all the Russian hyper-Muslim fighters, they're just taking over.
Yeah, right. That's there's the most power there, right? So I look at that and I'm like, that's what I want in my life with everything. Can I have absolute faith all the time? Can I trust in the moment every single thing that is happening? Can I have no resistance to life? Can I just say yes, thank you to everything that emerges, including things that cause me pain?
It's easy to say yes, thank you to the good things and when things are going well, right?
Yeah.
How do you say yes? How do you say yes, thank you to the evil?
You have to understand, I think, that evil has an evolutionary purpose, that it's there for a reason. It exists for a reason. I think one of the things that we see happening now seems like to me there's evil everywhere. And what has that done for people? It's forced them to abandon their materialism and go to God.
Jung has that quote, I'm butchering it, but something along the lines of like the devil is responsible for everyone's spiritual awakening.
That's right.
Yeah,
I didn't know that quote. That's perfect. That's exactly it. And so you need it, right? You need that force to find your inner strength. So you have to thank the opponent. You have to thank the evil force, the thing you're in opposition against, because they're allowing you the space and the room and the opportunity to discover just how strong you really are.
Mm-hmm. Within, the grappling of evil, a common theme of our discussion has been the unconscious. And one of the biggest life hacks for me has been understanding the unconscious and the collective unconscious and integrating that into my own work. So I'd love for you to explain that because it seems like you're familiar with it. What's the advantage of someone understanding the collective unconscious and being able to dig into the own unconscious mind for messages as to how to integrate that into the conscious mind. Like, what are we forgetting about nowadays in terms of the importance of the unconscious mind? Because most people don't even know about it. If you tell them, to understand the symbols or how to see their
Right.
dreams, most people have absolutely no idea, right? But we don't understand that our unconscious speaks a completely different language. And it wants to help us, but most of us don't know. We have all these amazing dreams that could change our lives. And we wake up and we're just like, whatever,
Yeah. That's a good question. How do you develop a deeper relationship with your unconscious mind is essentially the question.
Yeah. What are the benefits of that?
Well, the benefits of it are you are more aware and conscious, right? Like you're more in reality, right? You're not going to be motivated and driven by your unconscious impulses, right? And listen, it's a deep concept to understand, but we all have found ourselves in situations, I think, where we're in a repeating pattern. That's how I came to go to therapy. I was in a fight with my girlfriend.
It's always the one who's attracting the same kind of partner
right.
situation.
And I was having a fight with her, and I was, you do this and you do that, making my complaints. And I realized I've said this to every girlfriend that I've ever had, these exact words. And in that moment, it was, out of a movie. It was like a flashbulb went off in my head, and I was like, oh, this is me. There's something going on inside me. There's some force inside me that I'm not aware of that is controlling me. I'm in a loop. It's Groundhog Day here. What is going on? There's something about myself that I don't understand. And that's when I started to go to therapy. And that's when I started to understand that there were things that happened to me in my childhood, things that were painful, things that were scary, that I had repressed. Feelings, emotions, thoughts, beliefs, I had repressed because they were too painful for me to deal with. And so they're lodged not energetically in my body, but also they're relegated into the shadow of my consciousness. But they're there, unresolved. And the unconscious mind is, there's a lot of ways to talk about the unconscious mind, but in the context of my work, it's looking to resolve previous pain, right? So if we go back to relationships, if I wasn't seen by my mother, if I had a narcissistic mother and she didn't really see me, I was just kind of an object for her and she was showing me off, right? Which is a common thing. Mm-hmm. When I get into relationships, I'm going to have some kind of unconscious demand that my partner see me. And when she doesn't see me, I'm going to be extraordinarily hurt and I'm probably going to punish her, right? I'm going to make her pay for the sins of my mother.
Yes.
All of that is going on in the unconscious. I'm not taking any responsibility for it. I'm blaming it all on her. You're bad. You're wrong. You don't see me. You don't get it. I show up in this way. You don't appreciate me. All of that. And so we want to make conscious all of the feelings and the pain and the sadness and then the shadow material that's there, because it really gives us more freedom. If you have things lodged in your unconscious, you're not free. You're being run and driven by them. You're not rational. You can't get what you want from that place. You're constantly going to be attempting to resolve externally what can only be resolved internally. And that's the trap we all find ourselves in. And so you have to be willing to go inward and know that there's things about yourself that you don't know or understand, and actually be humble to it. And how do you know when your unconscious is running your life? When you keep coming up against the same wall over and over, when you keep dating the same person and having the same result, when you're stuck in some place where you can't make more money, you can't progress in your career, there's some force inside you that is prohibiting you from that. It's not the outside world. It's not that women are crazy or men are assholes or my boss is a jerk or rich people are greedy and there's no money for me. That's all an illusion, right? Like we have to go inward and see that it's something going on inside ourselves, something scary to feel, something painful that we don't want to look at. And if you're willing to do that and resolve it, what you're going to understand is there's really nothing out there, right? It's like it's all in here. And once you're resolved in here, once you know yourself in here, the world really just becomes almost like a playground for you to act out and everything that you want. It's not in opposition to you, right? The world is not in opposition to you. God is not in opposition to you. And once you can't understand that, though, until you've resolved your pain, because otherwise you're defending against it, which is you're defending against life, and you're projecting it all out.
Yeah. When the thing that sparked my unconscious journey was I didn't know that the power the unconscious has to manipulate without even knowing, truly. Like I was a master manipulator, especially with women and gaining popularity and all this stuff. And I had no idea I was doing it. Like I hit 21 and I was like, holy shit, I've been manipulating the fuck out of people for my whole life. And I had absolutely no idea. It was purely from unconscious fear. I didn't want to like lose power, so I just manipulated unconsciously. Why I'm saying that is that a lot of people who commit terror or evil in this world, they're not even aware of it. Like they're just...
No, they think that they're good guys.
Exactly. Just the unconscious fully manifesting through them. So that's the issue, right? Even I think it's humbling to work on the unconscious is that no matter how much of a good person you are, if you haven't died into your unconscious, how do you know you're so good?
Yeah.
You know, how can you possibly do that?
Yeah.
What's the first step to kind of end here? What's the first step you recommend someone taking who wants to, because most people have not started this stuff at all. They have never even thought about going into their unconscious. What's like the first thing you recommend for someone in that position to start venturing into that portal?
Well, I mean, I have my own bias here, but I would say that therapy is a great place to start.
What kind of therapy?
Any kind of therapy. Just find somebody that you connect with. It took me a long time to find the right therapist. You know, yesterday on Twitter, there was this whole thing about therapy, and everybody was talking about, you know, therapy is useless and therapists are bad and it does more damage than it does good. And I thought that was interesting to hear all that. And I think a lot of therapists out there haven't done the work internally. I think it's just cognitive. I think they've learned it out of a book, and I think it's just concepts for them. And
you have to mix in the somatics.
You have to mix in the somatic stuff, right? Like I feel trustworthy because it actually is my responsibility in the job that I'm in to constantly be going inward, to constantly be challenging myself. Because if I'm not doing that, how can I show up for my clients? I mean, I have to be doing the deep work. And so I've done a lot of the deep work. And so I think that gives me a kind of authority, I don't mean authority over others, but just an internal authority. Like I trust myself there. And so I think you have to do that work. And I think a lot of therapists don't. That said, there are good therapists out there, and it might take some time to find the right one for you. But you need somebody to reflect you back to you. You cannot see yourself. You cannot solve a problem of the mind with the mind.
Especially in the beginning.
Especially at the beginning.
Like now I don't need one as much, but in the beginning when I had no clue and I was attracting the same toxic partner, I needed that because I had no fucking clue.
Right. Exactly. And I think, you know, a lot of people are exploring psychedelics, and I think that can be useful. I mean, if you've never had any kind of experience with that, and you take some mushrooms and a world opens up. I mean, it's important to get out of normal states of consciousness, which you can do in therapy. I mean, my workshops, that's really what they're like. Like we're going somewhere else, and you have to get out of an ordinary state, which is a kind of losing control. So what would I recommend to people? You have to find something that resonates with you, that works for you, and just go slow. Just know that there's things about yourself that you don't know, that it's okay, that you're going to be scared to confront them. That's normal. And just, you know, venture into those waters and just let it take you. There's some part of us that wants to heal, right? There's a part of us that wants to resist that, but there's always a part of us that wants to heal. So to continue to connect to that part of you and ask it what it wants, ask it what it needs, ask it where you should go next. Like, pray about it. Like, the synchronicities will come. All of my, mentors, shamans, therapists, they all just appeared in some way. I didn't go searching. At the beginning, I was searching, but after that, everything came into my life, and it was all synchronicity, one after another, after another, after another. So once you open yourself up to it, it will just kind of unfold naturally.
Any adventure myth is a representation of going into the unconscious, right? You're gonna come across some goblins, some dragons, and some nasty people, but you're gonna find the gold at the end. You know? And then it's the journey that makes it that way.
Well, what else are you doing?
It's true.
You know, like it's fun. It's a fun adventure, and you're I don't know. For me, it's just because it wasn't until a couple of years ago, 5 years ago, where my cousin, who's a little older than me, was like, I was talking about all the stuff that I was doing. And he said, yeah, this is your life's work. And it was like, my life's work? No, it's just shit that I do. But from his perspective, you know, it's like, this is all you do. And this is your life's work. And I thought about that. Like, yeah, I have dedicated my life to this path. And I don't know why. I love it. I find it exciting. And I like to be at my edge. I like to explore, I want to go into my fear and feel it because I know how good it is on the other side.
Mm-hmm. I'm the same way. Nothing else really interests me.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Because once you realize that what else is there, exactly, like what else is there than mastering your own mind or understanding the codes of, you know, the world? Like what else really is there?
Yeah.
What else has the effect of making me a better and better person?
Right.
You know, there's nothing else. But
this is new. This has gone mainstream.
Yeah.
I mean, relatively
because of the shadow, because of the pain, amount of pain people are in.
Yeah.
They're seeking the light.
Yeah.
Because of the evil.
And I think there's some evolutionary force happening right now I do think like the consciousness is transcending, and I don't know what that all means, but like consciousness is always transcending. It's always moving. It's always expanding. So I think we're just at a point where it's happening at an accelerated rate. And really, I mean, yes, there's been ancient wisdom for a long time. I mean, all the codes are in the Bible. It's all been here. But you know, the concept of the unconscious and you know, Freud's work, that wasn't that long ago, right? Like we're just at the beginning of really starting to understand, at least in an academic way, how it is that all of this works.
Well, David, thank you, man. I appreciate the deep honesty. It's rare, truly, for you to acknowledge like where you're at and how you're still dealing with things. I appreciate it, because most people just will bypass that. So it reflects your honesty and your grappling with the shadow. So I appreciate it. Is there any workshops you're doing next couple of weeks or months, or anything you got coming?
Yes,
people can go to.
Life Force workshops. That's the regular workshop that I do here in Austin. We do it about every 2 months in my studio over on the East Side. So if you're interested in my work, lifeforceworkshops.com and come, and they're somatic and it's deep, and there's an opportunity for people to really like go all the way into their feelings, and they're awesome. So if you feel drawn to it, that's where you can find me.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Of course. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you want to watch more content, please click this video right here, and don't forget to subscribe right here. Thank you.